1 year has passed since the so-called trial of the century, the impeachment trial of President William Jefferson Clinton. The behind-the-scenes account of that trial and of the circumstances leading up to it is the subject of Jeffrey Toobin's new book, A Vast Conspiracy, the real story of the sex scandal that nearly brought down a president. I'm pleased to have Jeffrey Toobin, a writer for the New Yorker magazine, also ABC News' legal analyst, on this broadcast again. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Charlie.
First of all, congratulations.
Thanks.
I mean, it really is. You said to me as you sat down, and I took this as a genuine remark, not a sense of flattering yourself, that you are, what was the word you used?
I'm indecently proud of this book.
So what is it about this book that makes you indecently proud?
Well, I'll tell you, because it is a story that's really complicated, because there are so many different tangents. One of the things I did towards the end was tell the cast of characters. You know, I have a cast of characters in the front. And it goes on for pages when you think that, and you know, and it began, the way I tell it, in 1993, practically right after Bill Clinton is inaugurated, and goes all the way to the impeachment trial in 1999. But more than that, I think it is a great story about sort of where America is today. The high principle and low comedy, you know, is a subject that never fails to interest me. And, you know, I really think I pulled it together.
Okay. Well, I think you did too, as a matter of fact. But we'll talk about some of the dimensions of pulling it together in a second. Why is it a story of where America is today, both the high principle and the low character?
Because this is about politics today and how politics and journalism is practiced. But undergirding it all, I think, was what Henry Hyde very accurately called in his final speech on the Senate floor in the trial, these culture wars we're having. Democrats and Republicans, I believe, in their hearts, were not really fighting about, you know, where Bill Clinton placed his hands and whether it was obstruction of justice or perjury or nothing at all. They were really fighting about values and different conceptions of what's morality and what's tolerable, and that's important, and that's what's really lingering from the story.
Okay, then tell me who won that battle. I mean, what were the stakes, and how was it defined, and who won the battle? If it was about values and cultural wars,
I think the way I put it at one point in the book is Clinton may not have won, but Hyde lost. Clinton doesn't come away with this story, from this story as any sort of paragon, any sort of admirable person, but the notion of a government that would regulate, that would prosecute, that would investigate matters that, it turns out, the vast majority of Americans feel are private. Those forces lost. And I think we come away with this, I don't think ennobled in any way, but I do think somewhat more tolerant. And that I think is one of the longer lessons.
And who was the leader of those forces that lost? It wasn't Henry Hyde. Who was it? Was it Ken Starr?
Well,
or was Ken Starr a tool of those forces?
You know, I'll give you a name that probably doesn't come up very often. The person who is very much most responsible for the way this story unfolded is a man in Arkansas by the name of Cliff Jackson.
Oh, it's really he's the arch rival enemy of Bill Clinton.
And it's really a story out of Faulkner. I mean, these two guys, two sons of the South, both the most promising members of their generation. They meet up at Oxford when Clinton's a Rhodes Scholar and Jackson's a Marshall Scholar. And Jackson goes on to a prosperous but obscure career as a lawyer, but he nurses resentments for years against Clinton. He feels his critique is so much like the critique we later heard, that he's immoral, that he's promiscuous, that he talks his way out of trouble, that he dodged the draft. I mean, these are the things that really bother him. And what he does is in 1992, he goes up to New Hampshire to campaign against Bill Clinton, and he's humiliated and ignored. So he makes a revealing discovery about us now. He says, you know what? This is not the way to make progress. You use journalists and you use lawsuits. And he becomes Paula Jones' original sponsor, and he also becomes David Hale's original sponsor, who was the witness in the Whitewater case. So he midwifes into life the Paula Jones case and the Whitewater Independent Counsel, both of which merged in this category.
But it grew way beyond him.
Oh, of course. But but it begins with him.
Okay. Ken Starr is more Ken Starr here than anything else. Fair?
I don't know. There's a lot about Ken Starr.
Okay. You say he was more of a guy driven by self-interest than by ideology, correct?
Right. I think many of the critiques of that the Clinton people put out during this controversy were wrong.
That he was
that is sort of, Bible thumping, moralistic revivalist. I mean, that I don't think is true.
In fact, he was a guy admired by the Washington establishment on both sides of the aisle before this happened.
And the idea that his investigation broke the law repeatedly and abused people's rights, I don't think that's right either. What I found so shocking and so sort of, and this is where, as a former federal prosecutor, I really, identified with this issue. That investigation was so incompetent, and it revealed in small ways the flaws of all the Clinton critics. And one of the things I was proudest to do in the book is use one illustration which really, I think, told the whole story.
Tell me that illustration.
And that is, remember the story breaks late January 1998. Bill Clinton wags his finger at the American people on January 26th. On February 2nd, not even 1 week later, two of Starr's top deputies reached a written agreement with Monica Lewinsky and her lawyer, the famous Bill Ginsburg, and she was going to get immunity. She was going to testify. She was going to turn over the dress. She was going to become a government witness. I think things might have been very different if Clinton had been proved to be a liar within a week of having made his famous statement. But they all gathered around a conference table on February 2nd, and Starr, I think, reflecting the view of the Washington establishment and reflecting the zeal of the people around him, they said, you know what, we're not going to do this deal. We're going to, even though she signed it, we're not going to sign it. We think she's holding back. We think there's more there. We think there's another shoe to drop. And there was no other shoe to drop. Their zeal, their excess, their belief that there was something more to come prompted them to throw away the deal that might have really brought Clinton down. It wasn't until July, when she had new lawyers, she made exactly the same deal. She said exactly the same thing, but Starr had lost his moment.
But they were influenced by the fact that Webb, what's his name?
Webb Hubbell.
Had not given them what they thought they were going to get from him when they made a deal with him.
Right. They were. But, at some day, this belief that, well, we haven't proven our case, therefore the witnesses haven't cooperated enough. Maybe the witnesses maybe you haven't made your case because there's no case to be made.
Point's well taken. Yeah. It probably is that true. The answer to my question, which I was going to ask you, was could the president have been brought down by this? Your answer is yes, because, yes, if they had not been so zealous and had made the deal they could have made within weeks of the scandal, because the pressure would have built up to force him to resign.
Right. One of the interesting absolutely. I mean, who knows what really would have happened. But one of the interesting sort of behind-the-scenes dramas that I explored in the book is the Clinton White House was never really worried about the Republicans in the House and the Republicans in the Senate. They knew the only real jeopardy Clinton would be in is if the Democrats started to abandon him. And the Democrats, there was that brief moment in January, and again around the time when the Starr report came out, when it looked like they might vacillate a little. And only then, once the Democrats held, Clinton was safe.
What kind of marks does the president get for the way he handled this in terms of damage control, in terms of appearance before investigative authorities?
I think you have to, I am torn about Bill Clinton. I mean, there is something, extraordinarily appealing about, his fighting spirit and how, he takes a licking and keeps on ticking. However, you cannot lose your sense of moral outrage about someone who is willing to lie to his staff, to lie to his cabinet, to lie to the American people about this. Yes, I know, the subject matter was not what I view as impeachable, but still, it was appalling. But there is a great moment during Clinton's August 17th speech, perhaps the most criticized presidential address in history, when Clinton says, this is nobody's business but ours, this conduct. Right. And his advisors told him not to say it. His lawyers basically told him not to say it. His pollsters told him not to say it. And Clinton defied them all, and the American people, by and large, agreed with him.
Mm. This would never have happened, any of this, if he had made a settlement with Paula Jones's lawyers.
Sure.
He didn't do it because...
Well, you know, they tried.
And my second question is, where's the proof? But
well, I mean, they did try in November, or the fall of 1997, before the Lewinsky story broke. Remember, Paula Jones had a lot of different lawyers, and she had these two, Gil Davis and Joe Camerata, who were sort of decent workaday Washington attorneys who were not real politicians. And Bob Bennett, it was in August of 1997, right after the Supreme Court had said the case could be reinstituted, but before anything had really ginned up. They were going to settle the case, and they had even agreed on a dollar figure. I believe it was $700,000. And the Paula Jones, her advisors, not the lawyers, but her political advisors, specifically the famous Susan Carpenter McMillan, you remember, with the big blonde hair, she said, no, he's got to apologize. And Clinton wouldn't do it. And Clinton
wouldn't do it because he said, I can't do that to Hillary.
I can't do that to Hillary. And again, this is why this story has this wonderful intersection of the personal and the political, where Clinton should have settled the case, but he wasn't willing to do it on terms that might embarrass him in front of his wife.
Why do you think this whole episode with Lewinsky took place in the first place?
Why do middle-aged men have affairs at the office? I mean, he's not the only one. I mean, he had an affair. I think it is not, the fact that it took place is hardly exceptional. I mean, I really don't think it's any more complicated than that. I think the circumstances are complicated.
What circumstances being?
Well, the fact that he was president of the United States and that they had to,
They lived in a fishbowl.
And he lives in a fishbowl, and they went into this crazy hallway, which was the only place that they couldn't be seen by others. He had an affair because people have affairs. I mean, I don't really think it's any more profound than that.
The Vast Conspiracy, this title is what?
It's obviously an allusion to Hillary Clinton's famous remark, but it's the Democrats and the Republicans, both of whom, Democrats invented it, Republicans perfected it here, using the legal system for political gain. It's the Democrats came up with it, but the Republicans, I believe, conspired to take politics out of the voting booth, put it in the courtroom, and I don't think it belongs there when either people do.
Because they believe that a subpoena would they could force people to answer a subpoena, and therefore they'd be afraid to lie because they might go to prison.
Well, and also they could get, in a broader sense, they could get press attention, they could get fundraising advantages. Lawsuits have become a substitute for political action, and I think that's the real conspiracy I'm talking about.
Do people still care about this?
Oh, boy, I think they care like crazy. This is one of these stories. It's a guilty pleasure. People think, it's like asking people, do you think there's too much sex and violence on TV? Oh, absolutely. Are you interested in Monica and Bill? Oh, no, not interested. I'd rather talk about NAFTA. Oh, come on.
Jeffrey Toobin of Vast Conspiracy is the book. He has done a very, very, very good job. And it is an extraordinary time in America with some of those factors that he mentioned earlier in this program about the forces at work, both cultural and political and legal, and how the system came to deal with both personal and public issues. My thanks.
Thanks, Charlie.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.